Honorable Member of Parliament of Bangladesh, I request him to kindly come on stage. Mr. T.G. Sitaraman, Director, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, and Dr. Pema Gyamcho, Director General, International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. I once again request all of you who are sitting at the back to kindly come in front. Please come in front and sit down. There's lots of space, lots of empty space. I now request the Chair, Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, to kindly take over the proceedings of this session. And mic. Mic on kar dijiye.
Check. Thank you. Good afternoon. Dear friends, we are starting this session now, and I request your attention. Those who are sitting at the back, may I request them to come forward. This will make us a little bit more cozy, and our panel then will not have to talk to the empty sofa chairs. Can you please come forward? Please come forward. Yes, you can all come forward and sit at the chairs here. Thank you very much. It was a marathon inaugural session which lasted 2 hours and 30 minutes. The positive thing is that it shows a very special interest, and it reflected a very close chemistry involving the political leadership and the rest of us who have been behind this mega conference. Now we have to set an example, and I think I have the cooperation of my panelists assured. The conference organizers have told us that we have to conclude this session at 1:30. So essentially 37 minutes. I'm confident that we have professionals here, and they will know how to put across their message in the briefest possible time, highlighting the substance of what they would like to share with you. I'll take just 2 or 3 minutes to frame this discussion on a topic which is very interesting. I suppose the idea first was to talk about the current dimensions of the blue economy. And then somebody, I think, read the history of BIMSTEC, and the recent discussions in the recent years show that in the framework of BIMSTEC, we also put on the table the concept of mountain economy. And when the concept of mountain economy came, then somebody said, but you know, there are plains as well. So fundamentally, we are talking of the blue economy and the mountain economy and the plains economy. I would like to say that these two concepts, particularly blue economy and mountain economy, are naturally interlinked, and they are interlinked, mountains, rivers, oceans, through very obvious physiological state, but also in terms of philosophy and diplomacy. So in that sense, we will have a chance to hear from the panel the interrelationship among these different concepts. May I also say that, especially focused on the blue economy, many developments have taken place in the past decade. I think our knowledge and awareness of the real dimensions of blue economy have increased in the past decade. And when I say we, I'm referring not just to India, but definitely to South Asia. And it is with that, in a way, the concept of the Bay of Bengal community has also come up. This is very significant because BIMSTEC, which is about to celebrate 25 years, when it began, it used to project itself as a sub-regional organization. But now the projection, quite appropriately, is of a body which is committed to regional organization, and going beyond regional organization. Now we are talking about the Bay of Bengal community. So in a way, a holistic approach, an integrated approach, that is what essentially is required. And at this stage, I'm really very happy that we have a distinguished panel which has already been introduced to you. But I'm now requesting the very first speaker, His Excellency Tenzin Lekpel, Secretary General of BIMSTEC, to address you. I'm very confident that he will be able to take about 7 minutes or so that we remain on to the timeline. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Chair of this panel session, Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, the other panel members, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be here in Guwahati after a long time. I'm also honored to participate in this important River Conclave 2022 on the theme Rivers of the Bay of Bengal and connecting the blue economy, mountain economy, and the plains economy, which is being attended by dignitaries and personalities from various professional backgrounds. I would like to sincerely take this opportunity to thank the Asian Conference for giving us this platform to share our experiences and thoughts. The BIMSTEC Secretariat will look forward to our continued cooperation with Asian Conference. Rivers, as we all know, are very important, and they are the lifeline in all forms of life. And all civilizations in our world were born and developed on the banks of rivers. We are fortunate that BIMSTEC, besides having unique geographical position and strategically located as a bridge between South and Southeast Asia, providing opportunities and potential to increase trade between the two regions. The BIMSTEC is also blessed with rivers that connect the high mountainous regions with the low-lying regions, again providing openings for livelihood, economic growth, and also serving as a vital regional ecosystem. Mountains are a substantial part of the BIMSTEC region, with around 23% of the total land area. It's a home to about 140 million BIMSTEC people, and a further 1.5 billion people downstream depend directly or indirectly on the mountains for a range of goods and services, including water, energy, food, and biodiversity. Therefore, realizing the importance of mountain economy for the region, the 17th Ministers' meeting held last year on 30th April, and our leaders during the 4th BIMSTEC Summit underscored the necessity of making efforts to ensure conservation of the mountain ecosystem, and decided to establish an intergovernmental working group on mountain economy. Currently, the Secretariat is in the process of getting nominations from the member states to form the working group on mountain economy and develop its plan of action. Similarly, recognizing the enormous wealth and potential that the Bay of Bengal region has in its waters and oceans, the BIMSTEC leaders during the 4th summit again emphasized the importance of blue economy and agreed to establish a working group, an expert group, and develop a plan of action on the BIMSTEC blue economy. And we are in the process of formulating this institution. BIMSTEC aspires for seamless connectivity in the region, and therefore the adoption of the Master Plan Transport Connectivity, which was adopted by the 5th BIMSTEC Summit, is a milestone in this regard. The Master Plan is a 10-year strategy for enhanced transport and trade linkage through the development of physical infrastructure, including roads, railways, ports, inland waterways, and airports, with soft components such as capacity building, access agreements, and harmonization of rules, regulations, policies, and measures related to transport between and among BIMSTEC member countries. The presence of large rivers in our region and the vital role that they play in the inland water transport provides in enhancing regional connectivity has been emphasized in the master plan. The landlocked BIMSTEC member states like Bhutan and Nepal, for example, will benefit from the inland waterways in India and Bangladesh through multimodal and intermodal connectivity, as it provides access to the sea and seaports from where goods are transported. A number of flagship projects of inland water transport in the BIMSTEC master plan is included. We hope that the member states will take advantage of the plan and implement the components of the master plan, which will ensure achievement of our aspiration for a truly connected Bay of Bengal region. On the other hand, while strengthening transport connectivity in the BIMSTEC region is exciting and will bring benefits, we must also consider and address the possible negative consequences that it can bring to our fragile mountains, rivers, and oceans that are crucial towards achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Therefore, BIMSTEC has identified environment and climate change as one of the 7 pillars of its cooperation, and Bhutan has been identified as the lead country in this sector. A joint working group has already been formed for environment and climate change, which is likely to meet in August in Bhutan and finalize the plan of action. After a 2-year COVID-19 induced delay, BIMSTEC concluded its 5th summit on 30th March 2022. During this summit, besides witnessing progress by signing several conventions, memorandum of associations, adoption of master plan, approval of reorganization of 7 focus areas, the summit marked an important milestone by signing the BIMSTEC Charter by our leaders. And to further strengthen the BIMSTEC institution, during this last summit, India committed $1 million to rejuvenate the Secretariat towards its operational budget during the 5th summit. Excellencies, BIMSTEC hopes to build on this momentum and reassure the region that it is on track to realize a prosperous Bay of Bengal community. And with these few words, I would like to once more extend my deep appreciation to the Asian Conference led by Mr. MP Bezbarao, the other governing council members, Ministry of External Affairs, and Government of Assam for organizing this dialogue and giving us the BIMSTEC Secretariat to participate in this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, for presenting a very substantive statement from the viewpoint of BIMSTEC Secretariat. I think you have added to our knowledge and you have given us the present state of play. It's evident that in terms of the further work of the 2 working groups, one on mountain economy and the other on blue economy, you need all the support you can get from the member governments, and I hope that would be forthcoming. At this stage, now, it is my pleasure to invite my friend and colleague, Ambassador Vikram Doraiswamy, to give his perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. If I may, in the spirit of the practice in South Africa, where I had the pleasure of serving under you many years ago, say all protocol observed to save time, which essentially means we don't need to take everybody's names in a long list. Let me make 5 contextual points and 3 quick summary points, so as to fit into the time available to us. First, if we go beyond the normal idea of the importance of water, which we should take as a given, let's look at rivers and indeed even oceans in a political sense. There is obviously a cross-border dimension to rivers and to oceans, but rivers most of all, because these have cross-border dimensions both between countries and within countries. Countries like India, for instance, which are made up of a number of states, river waters crossing states is a crucial part of the connectivity issue. It's also a crucial part of political issues. So there is therefore a first point, a political context to looking at rivers. Second, the historical and cultural dimension point. And I think His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, made that point quite eloquently, as did the Chief Minister of Assam. As rivers are shapers of culture, history, and tradition. And you need go no further than this very city to see how rivers have transformed and shaped the life and culture of the Assamese people, but also in the larger region of pre-independence Bengal. Third, an economic dimension. Rivers offer a complex construct through which human activity is supported, both directly and indirectly. Directly, obviously, historically, through irrigation, through fisheries, through a range of activities that depend upon directly drawing upon the river, and also indirectly. Today, in the modern age, rivers are an important source of driving energy, but also transport and commerce through connectivity. And we will have a session on that in which I'm sure we can bring out some of these aspects even more comprehensively. Fifth, the idea of sustenance of human life. Obviously, potable water for all, sanitation, and the sustenance of cities and urban agglomerations. Rivers are central to all of that. So in looking at all of this, what are the conclusions we can draw? If we take these as given propositions that we need to move forward in analyzing rivers this way, then I think we need to understand first and foremost that today we tend to look at rivers rather segmentally rather than comprehensively. Governments normally take rivers as river water ministries, in which there is fundamentally a technocratic approach to a river. But if you recognize that rivers are all of these and more, then there is a need to have a more comprehensive, more holistic approach to rivers. Not merely the technocratic, not merely the political, and indeed not merely the emotive or populist aspect of rivers. Without this, you have no means to actually move forward in understanding the complexity that rivers actually bring to us. Second, the notion of rivers as a perspective, or the notion of the perspective of rivers that we have as separators, that separate us bank from bank, city from city, or state from state, and indeed country from country. If you look at them as connectors, then actually rivers have a far more fundamental role to play in reimagining and reconceptualizing the geographies to which we are all bound. In that sense, then you could look at water cooperation as more than just hydrodiplomacy, more than just the idea of discussing how to share water, which is always a complex topic in which the question of what share is appropriate and how much is appropriate for each person, to come to a more comprehensive way of looking at management of water and management of rivers. By this, I mean management of the ecosystem to which a river is central. That includes the river itself, the health of the water, the health of the banks, and the health of the system through which the river runs, the health of the connected lands that depend on the river, overwatering, underwatering, desertification, salination of land, and indeed the idea that rivers are a complex ecosystem that need to be sustained, including the aquatic life therein. Second, management of the totality of the river. We tend to look at rivers as segments of the river. There is the upper course of the river, the mid course of the river, the lower course of the river. But there is a totality of a basin of the river, which in 2011, the governments of India and Bangladesh set forward in a fairly far-sighted way to look at rivers as integrated ecosystems and to look at river management, cooperation as a basin-wide approach through which we could actually look at how a river needs to satisfy the different needs of different communities in different contexts. So this includes in the northern hill areas and the mountain areas where rivers are key not just for the supply of water, but also for the supply of electricity, right down to the course in the deltaic areas where they're key to the sustenance of fishing economies or even complex ecosystems like the Sundarbans. And finally, management of the people aspect of rivers. Historically, communities that live on or actually literally live on the river, not on the banks of it. These are complex communities that are in danger of dying out across South Asia and across Southeast Asia. Management of these traditional systems, management of these traditional cultures is a critical part of what policymakers and think tanks together need to think about. So let me offer these as initial comments. I would be happy to take on specific ideas on what we can discuss if there is time for a comment section. With that, sir, let me come to a conclusion here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vikram. You are not merely an accomplished diplomat, but you're doing such a formidable work in Bangladesh. And you have not forgotten your African traditions. So I congratulate you on that. Thank you. You have put across some very interesting points. And obviously, this comes not merely from the knowledge of the speaker, but the most complex wicket, the diplomatic wicket that he guards in Bangladesh, creating a lot of synergy there. And I'm sure if we have a few minutes left, I would very much like to open this subject to a discussion from the floor. Now it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Raheem Razak from Bangladesh to please speak and share his perspectives with all of us.
Thank you so much. And Honorable Chair, Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, and of course, my esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, after a very invigorating and star-studded inaugural session, I think we're all much more informed as to what this dialogue is all about. And of course, this panel itself is indulging in this conversation of rivers of Bay of Bengal and the economies in terms of blue economy, mountains, and the plains. Personally, for me, I think I have had the pleasure of experiencing all these three aspects. I studied in St. Paul's, which is the mountains, the Darjeelings. I did my college in Mayo College, which is the deserts, the plains, let's say. And I represent a constituency which is by the Padma River, which is, of course, the deltas, and of course, the blue economy. Hence, of course, it's a comprehensive indulgence of ideas that this conference needs to look into. Of course, the Bay of Bengal, we all are very much aware of the importance of the Bay of Bengal. I call it the epicenter of the next Asian growth, and hence the multilateral frameworks that has been indulged, the likes of SARC, BIMSTEC, BBIN, or even I want to indulge into the whole discussion of ASEAN Plus. So this whole indulgence of these frameworks needs to challenge us into making grounds in terms of implementation. And that is where I think I would just be very short in my deliberation. I think in this day and age, and eminently as of now, we see a global crisis, and the narratives of security does not limit us only to defense, but it's about security of food, security of fuel, security of of course, movement, security in terms of open trade and commerce, and of course, the utility and the movement as we see it. Hence, I think the dialogue of this nature has much more significance as of day and age. We are talking about bilaterals, but also we are talking about regional connectivity. And when we do indulge in terms of the economic aspect of it, and when we define economics, economics is a state of country or region in terms of the production and consumption of goods and supply of money and movement. So that is the core definition. So when we do that, we must take into context people-to-people connections. When I say people-to-people, of course, I mean that nations and communities need to believe in this thought process. Of course, the frameworks and the initiatives are all fine, and we're happy to indulge in it. But the urgency is of now. I think we are losing time. A lot of bureaucracy, a lot of discussions, a lot of ideas being shared, and enough has been shared. I think it's time that we actually make amends and we try to fulfill the targets and the objectives that you have set. And the Honorable Chief Minister of Assam, his deliberation is very wide and very depth idea of what Assam and the potential of Assam can be in the future. The Honorable Foreign Minister of Bangladesh has been very thought-provoking and very philosophical idea of river and the history of river and how it can rejuvenate the whole idea. And the Honorable Foreign Minister of India has been very specific in terms of laying out what we need to do as of now. So I just want to close because I'm the substitute because Shahidul Haq was supposed to be in the panel. I want to just close my remarks by saying that the trade, when we talk about trade and economics, of course, we need to talk about the numbers. And when we talk about the frameworks and the numbers, it needs to have the linkage. BBIN, of course, they are the framework of BBIN. Although it's very, I would say, very impressive in its own indulgence, but then again, it hasn't taken up too much because of some impediments with some nations. I just don't want to quote. They are much more conservative in their nature. It's about consensus. When we talk about consensus, BIMSTEC again, which has huge potential, huge economic potentials. Unfortunately, there are impediments and we haven't been able to resolve those. So that is where I think our discussion should be. I think I'm on my time and cue, but I think the rest of the discussion, two-day discussions, I think we want to be much more positive and much more target-oriented so that we get some objectives that can be followed across the next 1 year so that we set our goals and let us be all in a very target-oriented approach so that we can deliver what we dream to be a prosperous regional and comprehensive regional connectivity. Of course, thank you so much for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We know you very well as a bright young member of parliament from Bangladesh, and you have very aptly stressed the need for action and, in fact, urgent action. I think that point has been driven home very convincingly. Thank you. Now I invite Dr. Pema Gyamsho, Director General, International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. I'm sure you'll put across your views on mountain economy and other related subjects as well. Welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, distinguished panelists, distinguished participants. I want to talk a bit more, not about use of waters, use of rivers, the economic benefits, the connectivity, the culture, the tradition, the heritage that we gain from rivers, but more about the importance of rivers and how to keep rivers alive. I have a slide presentation, so I just want to, before lunch and being the last speaker, perhaps a pictorial presentation would be more appropriate. So I'm going to be talking about how rivers connect. But rivers can also divide, as you know. But we must focus on the connectivity part and address what divides us in a way that, the rivers continue to be alive. Next slide, please. Is there a remote control? Okay, just give me an opportunity to introduce the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. It's a regional knowledge learning and sharing center based in Kathmandu. So we focus on science. I think this morning I was listening to the very, very distinguished speakers talking about importance of rivers, but I didn't hear the word mountains, the glaciers and the glacier lakes from where the rivers are born. So we work there and we try to produce science and evidence. Next, we have 8 member countries, as you all know, stretching from Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. So we work through all these 8 Hindu Kush Himalayan countries. Next slide. When I lift my thumb, if you could change the slide. So ICIMOD is not a university, it's not a regional, not a research center per se, it's not a development organization. We work at the interface between science, policy, and practice. So we collect evidence from different sources, secondary research information and data and so on. We collect them, analyze them, and then disseminate them across our region and also beyond. That is our role. Yeah, next slide, please. So, where do the waters in the river originate from? And that is the message I want to give it to you. This is the physical feature of the Hindu Kush Himalayas. It's known as the water towers of Asia. Because 10 of Asia's major rivers originate from there. It's known also the third pole. The third pole because it has the largest reserve of ice. 54,000 cubic kilometers of ice reserved in the, fresh water is reserved in the form of ice in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. I need to correct that figure. 60,000 cubic kilometer. Imagine that. It's, huge. Without that, the sources of river would simply disappear. It's also a global asset. It's not just to the Hindu Kush Himalayas. The people living in Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and all, but for the whole, world, it is very, very important. If you look at this map, I don't know whether you can see or not, 10 of Asia's major rivers originate from this region, from the Hindu Kush, including the Ganges and the Brahmaputra, the Mekong, Irrawaddy, and Salween that I think is the subject of interest here. It provides livelihoods to 240 million people living within the mountains in the hills and valleys, but another 1.6 billion people living downstream depends on the waters from the rivers of this region. So you can imagine how important it is. Next slide, please. Just before that. Okay, good. Thank you very much. A bit late, but I can still use it. Right. Now, what is happening? Let me just go. Okay, that's okay now. Now, climate change. I heard this mentioned, but what is the impact of climate change? Even if the rest of the world managed to keep the temperature rise to below 1.5 degrees Celsius, it's going to be too hot for this region. 1/3 of our glaciers will disappear by the turn of the century. And if you don't do anything, 2/3 will disappear. Will the Brahmaputra remain the same? Will the Ganges remain the same? I don't think so. So I think this is something that we need to think about. We need to take transformative action. Very happy to hear the Honorable Chief Minister say this morning that Assam is switching over to clean, green energy in 5 years' time. So good, transformative change. Assam is going into organic agriculture. Wonderful. I hope we can manage. So these are the things that transformational changes that are required. to limit global warming below 1.5 degrees centigrade. As I told you, what happens up there affects elsewhere. Now, I've seen in the introduction, the northeast is the underbelly of the Himalayas. Now, what happens in the belly itself or the upper belly will affect the underbellies. So I think we need to think about that. Disasters, there would be a session tomorrow where I will be talking a bit more, because along with the benefits, the economic opportunities that rivers provide, it also destroys lives and livelihoods. And that is the part that we must be very, very mindful in the face of climate change. So I will talk about this more tomorrow since we don't have enough time. Sorry, just want to little bit. Okay, there is commitment from the region. Our governments, the ministries concerned with climate change came together in October 2020 to sign a ministerial declaration to commit to cooperation. There is no alternative to regional cooperation if we are to address the impacts of climate change. So we are taking this forward now to implement 6 urgent actions. And the most important urgent action is to bring people together, is to bring communities and countries together. And that is where we are at this stage. Thank you very much for this opportunity to give thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pema. You have been very cooperative and very insightful. Usually when I hear of a PowerPoint presentation, I get a bit worried, where you really raced through it. I appreciate it. Dear friends, in the spirit of democracy, since we have spoken for so long from the podium, I'm going to allow 2 questions or comments, one from a gentleman and one from a lady. I see lots of academics, journalists, media figures, and everybody else here. So you have the opportunity to just take about a minute. You don't have to ask a question. You can even make a comment. And in case the panel feels the need, they will answer. So who wants to go first? Good. You look quite tired. And you're waiting for lunch, but I think lunch is not going to happen very soon. There is another session. Maybe your silence will bring it closer. But I appreciate your cooperation, and therefore, let me just take a minute to conclude this session by pointing out that, and this is a very important conclusion I think we need to draw, these 2 major segments, mountain economy and blue economy, while the awareness has really gone up, the governments are actually lagging behind. Governments of this region do not have a blue economy policy. They don't have a mountain economy policy, which is the reason why BIMSTEC is frankly handicapped. And Secretary General has just revealed that we are still in the midst of setting up the working groups. So I would like to take this opportunity from this podium to appeal to the governments to develop their own policies. Only then they can think of the convergences of those policies. And the final point is, with so many scholars and academics sitting here, I think we should develop and flesh out this concept of Bay of Bengal community, because this is now accepted by the political leaders. But frankly, nobody is still very clear as to what this concept means. So in a way, this is a challenge, especially to the young researchers, to apply their mind. Reference to history is fine. Detailed reference to history is also fine. But the youngsters have to think of the future. And if we are really beginning to talk about Bay of Bengal community, please help us to understand what it means and what the governments can do. Thank you very much. I want to thank the panelists for their tremendous cooperation, and over to the anchor now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We just would take 2 minutes of your time. First, so 2 minutes for two things. One, sir, one for a felicitation. I request the volunteers to kindly come up with the scarves. And secondly, after the felicitation, a group photograph.
Next is this, no? इसके स्पीकर्स हाँ इसके स्पीकर्स बदल गए हैं कि ये तो कट गए हैं दूसरा आ गया ये Thank you very much. I thank the chair and the panelists of this session. The moment we set the stage, we will begin with our next session, the special plenary session on the theme of NADI, Ganga to Mekong, Eastern South Asia and Southeast Asia, Natural Allies in Development and Interdependence.
ये मेरे पास